It is January 21st, 2026. And if you're sitting there maybe looking out the window, sipping your coffee, the world probably looks pretty much the same as it did yesterday.
On the surface, absolutely. The
Yep.
sun came up, traffic is moving, the borders on the map haven't shifted overnight.
Exactly. But if you were able to look, through the pavement, through the walls of the bank branches, and deep inside the digital infrastructure of the global economy, you would see a massive construction site.
It's a renovation project of, just absolute massive proportions. And it's messy, there's metaphorical dust everywhere, old pipes are being ripped out, and new fiber optic cables are being laid down.
And most people don't even know the construction crew is on site.
Which is how the most significant changes usually happen, isn't it?
Yeah.
Quietly, in the back room, by engineers and policy wonks, until suddenly you flip a switch, the lights work differently.
So, today we are putting on our hard hats. We are going to look at that hidden plumbing of global finance. Specifically, we're focusing on a bold and actually very quiet move by the Reserve Bank of India, the RBI, that's tied to the upcoming 2026 BRICS summit.
This feels like a genuine turning point, and I really don't use that phrase lightly. We aren't just talking about a new trade tariff or, an interest rate hike. We are talking about the architecture of money itself, the very rails it runs on.
The metaphor we're using today, and I think it's a good one, is the digital highway. We've heard for years that cash is dying, but this is different. This is about money moving from being a static thing you hold in your wallet to a fluid thing that streams like data.
It's the shift from the U.S. dollar acting as the world's operating system. You could almost call it the Windows 95 of global trade.
Yeah.
It's clunky, but everyone uses it.
Yeah.
To a new multipolar digital architecture.
And our mission for this deep dive is to really understand that shift. We need to decode the alphabet soup that, let's be honest, scares people away from this topic.
Yeah.
CBDC, mBridge, DLT.
We're going to break all of those down. No jargon left unexplained. The goal here is clarity.
And the so what here is huge. This isn't just for bankers in tall glass towers. This affects how you travel, how small businesses trade, and honestly, the geopolitical balance of power for the next 50 years.
It really does.
Yeah.
So we're pulling from some fascinating reports from Netizen that look at these RBI proposals, the current state of this mBridge platform in 2026, and the deep technical architecture of this new world.
It's a dense stack of research, but the story it tells is just incredible.
It really is a thriller, just told through policy papers.
So let's jump in. Section 1. Set the scene for us. It's January 2026. What exactly is happening in India?
So the context is that India is hosting the 2026 BRICS summit. And in the world of diplomacy, symbolism is everything. It's the unspoken language.
Right.
And the logo for the summit features a lotus.
A lotus. Now, for those who don't follow Indian politics closely, that's not just a random flower, is it? That's the symbol associated with the ruling BJP party.
It is. It's their political emblem. And putting that on the global stage for a summit like this is a signal. It's a very clear signal of New Delhi's intent to lead. They don't just want to host the party, they want to choose the music.
And the song they are queuing up is this proposal from their central bank, the RBI.
Exactly. The proposal is to put a formal agenda item on the table, linking the Central Bank Digital Currencies, or CBDCs, of all the BRICS nations.
Okay, let's unpack that immediately because that sounds huge. We've heard about BRICS for years. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. And usually it's a photo op. The leaders shake hands, they issue a vaguely worded joint statement, and everyone goes home.
It's often been criticized as a talk shop.
Right. But you're saying this proposal is about connecting their actual official state-issued money digitally.
Yes. This would be the first time BRICS leaders would be forced to formally debate interconnecting their sovereign digital currencies. The vision here, and the sources call it this, is a digital Silk Road.
That sounds very poetic. And frankly, a little bit like marketing fluff, a digital Silk Road. But what is the practical problem? Why do we need a new road? Is the old road actually broken?
The old road isn't just broken. It's a winding dirt track full of potholes, bandits, and endless toll booths. To understand why this is such a big deal, we have to look at the old world of payments.
Okay.
The current system is a nightmare called correspondent banking.
Correspondent banking. It sounds so polite and old-fashioned, like pen pals writing letters.
It is anything but polite or efficient. Let's make this real. Imagine you own a small textile factory in Mumbai. You need to buy raw cotton from a supplier in Brazil, a pretty standard global trade transaction.
Makes sense.
You walk into your bank in Mumbai with a stack of Indian rupees. You say, I need to send this to Rio de Janeiro.
And your bank says, no problem, sir.
No. Your bank says, We can't just send rupees to Brazil. The Brazilian bank doesn't want rupees. What are they going to do with them? They can't pay their staff or their suppliers in rupees.
Okay, so they want Brazilian reals. Or, more likely, they want a currency they can easily use anywhere. They want US dollars.
Precisely. The dollar is the global intermediary, so now the maze begins. Your Indian bank has to find a correspondent bank, which is almost always a massive Western financial institution in New York or London or Frankfurt.
So my money has to leave India first.
Yes. Your bank sends a message through a system called SWIFT, which is just a messaging system, not a payment system. And then the money itself moves. It goes to, say, JP Morgan Chase in New York. They take your rupees, they convert them to dollars.
Taking a little slice for themselves in the process, I assume.
Of course, a fee for the transaction, a spread on the currency exchange rate. Then that New York bank has to find another correspondent bank that has a relationship with the final bank in Brazil.
So my money is literally traveling from India to New York, taking a little vacation, getting its passport stamped, and then flying south to Rio. It's absurd.
It is absurd. And at every single stopover, every hop, a banker takes a slice. A fee here, a compliance check fee there. It's like a relay race where every runner shaves a little piece off the baton.
And the worst part for me, if I'm that business owner in Mumbai, isn't even the cost. It's the time, isn't it? I'm just waiting.
It's the time and the uncertainty. It takes 2, 3, sometimes 5 business days. In the year 2026, you can stream a 4K movie from a server in Brazil instantly, but your money travels by steamship. It's completely archaic.
And I assume during those 5 days, I have no idea where the money is. I've sent it. My supplier hasn't received it. It's just in the ether.
It's in the black box of the financial system.
Yeah.
And this leads to the terrifying scenario that keeps central bankers awake at night. Settlement risk. The technical term is Herstatt risk, named after a German bank that collapsed in the 70s.
Herstatt risk. That sounds suitably ominous. What is it exactly?
It's the risk that in the time gap, in that 5-day window between me sending you dollars and you sending me, say, euros, one of our banks goes bankrupt.
Oh. So I send the money, it's on its little steamship journey, and before it arrives, the correspondent bank in New York goes under, and my money is just gone.
Poof. Vaporized. It gets trapped in the bankruptcy proceedings. Your supplier never gets paid. You're out the money. That is the old world. Slow, expensive, opaque, and fundamentally risky.
And so the RBI's proposal, this digital Silk Road, is about replacing that entire maze with a direct, high-speed digital highway.
Exactly. Instant settlement. No 5-day wait. No routing through New York or London. No steamships. Just a direct digital connection from Mumbai to Rio.
Okay, that makes perfect sense on a practical level for businesses. But we have to talk about the precedent here, because this isn't the first time these countries have tried to bypass the dollar.
No, not at all.
India and Russia, for instance, have been trying to trade directly for a while now, especially since the wave of sanctions in 2022. And it hasn't exactly been smooth sailing, has it?
Not at all. That experience is actually a key driver for this new proposal. They tried using ad hoc fixes, things like bilateral forex swaps.
Which basically means I'll accept your currency if you accept mine.
Right. I'll take your rupees for my oil if you take my rubles for your tea. But they ran smack into a massive economic wall that the sources call the rupee trap.
The rupee trap. Explain that to us.
It's a classic trade imbalance problem. Russia was selling a huge amount of oil to India, billions and billions of dollars worth of oil flowing one way, and India was paying for that oil in its own currency, in rupees.
Okay, sounds simple enough.
The problem was Russia didn't want to buy an equivalent amount of Indian goods. They didn't need billions of dollars worth of Indian tea or pharmaceuticals or machinery.
So Moscow ended up with a giant pile of digital rupees sitting in a bank account in India.
Billions of dollars worth. They were sitting on a mountain of Indian currency that was just stuck.
Like having a gift card to a store that doesn't sell anything you want to buy.
That is a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And because the rupee isn't a fully convertible currency on the global market, they couldn't just easily exchange it for dollars or euros or yuan. They were trapped.
So what did they do with it?
Eventually, they worked out a deal to invest it in Indian government bonds and infrastructure projects. But that was a Band-Aid. It wasn't a real solution. It showed the limits of a simple bilateral arrangement.
So this new proposal for the 2026 summit is about learning from that failure. It's trying to take those Band-Aids off and perform actual surgery.
Precisely. The goal is to move from these clunky ad hoc swaps to a systemic cure, to build a multilateral system where if Russia earns rupees from India, they can seamlessly use those rupees to buy something from Brazil without ever needing to touch a dollar.
That makes the currency useful to everyone in the club, not just the country that issued it.
That's the vision.
Now, when we say multilateral, the club has gotten a lot bigger recently. It's not just the 5 countries anymore. This is a crucial piece of context.
Yes, we absolutely have to talk about the BRICS universe, or BRICS Plus, as some call it.
Who's in the club now as of early 2026?
So you have the original 5, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. But in the last couple of years, they've been joined by Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Indonesia.
That is a very interesting and very specific list of countries. You have huge oil and energy producers in there with Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Iran, Russia. You have massive populations with India, China, Indonesia, Ethiopia.
It's a group with serious economic weight. Together, they account for over 40% of global economic activity and a similar chunk of the world's population. When you have that much mass moving in the same direction, you create your own gravitational pull. You can't just ignore it as a new stocking shop anymore.
And why now? We've talked about the practical business case, but why is the push for this payment system happening with such urgency in 2026? What's the strategic motivation?
The invisible hand here that goes to the banquet is geopolitics. If we look back at the BRICS summit in Rio de Janeiro in 2025, payment interoperability was listed as a priority. It was a nice to have. It was on the to-do list.
A technical aspiration.
Exactly. But in the years since, the tone has shifted completely. It is now being framed as an institutional reality, an urgent necessity.
So what changed in that year?
The continuous escalating realization that the traditional financial rails, the SWIFT messaging system, the US dollar, the correspondent banking network can be and are being weaponized.
Right.
Sanctions, asset freezes, trade disputes, the flashpoints in Eastern Europe, tensions in Latin America. These nations looked at what happened to Russia's central bank reserves in 2022, where hundreds of billions of dollars were frozen overnight with the flip of a switch.
And they said, that could be us.
That could be us next.
Nice.
The sources also specifically mentioned the political rhetoric coming from the U.S., mentioning President Donald Trump's repeated labeling of BRICS as an anti-American bloc.
And threatening economic repercussions for countries that align with it.
Yes. And ironically, that kind of rhetoric acts as an accelerant. It's the best recruiting sergeant the BRICS bloc could ask for. When the U.S. threatens to cut countries off from the dollar system, it reinforces the BRICS view that payment autonomy is not a luxury.
It's a strategic necessity for national security.
It convinces them that they cannot build their economic future on a system where someone else, someone with potentially different geopolitical interests, holds the kill switch.
So let's get into the bricks of this new house they're trying to build. Pun absolutely intended. We keep saying CBDC, Central Bank Digital Currency. I feel like we need to pause here and be very, very clear. Is the Reserve Bank of India just launching its own crypto coin? Are they trying to be the next Dogecoin?
No, definitely not. And I think the central bankers of the world would have a collective heart attack at that comparison.
But it uses similar technology, right? I hear words like blockchains and distributed ledgers thrown around.
It uses similar plumbing, similar underlying tech concepts, but the ideology is the polar opposite. Bitcoin was built from the ground up to be decentralized. No masters, no central authority, no censorship. Anarchic, almost.
Yeah.
A CBDC, that is the state, fully embodied in digital form.
So it's not about escaping the system.
It's about making the system more efficient and more powerful. A CBDC is a direct liability of the central bank. It is the digital equivalent of a physical banknote in your pocket, issued and guaranteed by the government.
So if Bitcoin is meant to be untraceable digital gold, a CBDC is what? A digital dollar bill with a serial number that the government can track in real time.
That's a very good way of putting it. It's efficient, it's fast, it can be incredibly useful, but it is fundamentally centralized. The central bank sees every transaction.
And looking at the global landscape in late 2025, early 2026, who is actually doing this? Is this still just a theory in a white paper, or are these things live?
Oh, it's very real. The latest numbers show 137 countries are exploring a CBDC in some form. That represents 98% of global GDP. Almost every central bank on the planet has a team working on this.
Okay, so give us the scorecard for the BRICS Plus members. Who is winning the race?
It's a real mixed bag, and they all have different priorities. India's e-rupee is a good example. It's got a solid retail pilot, over 7 million users. They're focusing on fascinating features like offline payments.
Offline payments, how does that work?
It allows you to transfer digital rupees from one phone to another without an internet connection, just using NFC or Bluetooth. This is huge for a country like India with vast rural areas where internet can be patchy. It mimics the behavior of physical cash.
And you mentioned programmability before.
Yes, this is where it gets a little sci-fi and, frankly, a bit controversial. They can program the money itself. Imagine a government subsidy for farmers. They can issue e-rupees that can only be used to purchase fertilizer or seeds.
So the money has rules coded into it. It can't be spent on, say, alcohol or gambling.
Exactly. From the government's perspective, it's incredibly efficient and eliminates fraud. From a privacy perspective, well, that's another conversation.
A double-edged sword, for sure. Who else? China's the big one, right?
China is the undisputed leader in this space. The ECNY, or digital yuan, is years ahead of everyone else. We're talking trillions of yuan in transaction volume already, and their focus is heavily on international trade and cross-border payments.
They want the digital yuan to be used globally to settle trade, chipping away at the dollar's dominance.
That is the clear strategic goal. Then you have Brazil. Their project is called DREX. They aren't really worried about you buying a cup of coffee with it yet. Their focus is on wholesale finance.
So bank-to-bank transactions.
Right, making the big money transfers between financial institutions faster and cheaper. And they're also very focused on something called tokenization, which is basically creating digital versions of real-world assets like stocks and bonds.
And the others, Russia, the new members.
Russia is pushing ahead with its digital ruble, moving toward making it mandatory infrastructure for large companies. They're explicitly building what they call a digital bridge to connect with the financial systems of friendly nations. For newcomers like Iran, the motivation is almost purely about sanctions resilience. And for Saudi Arabia and the UAE, their focus is similar to Brazil's wholesale finance for their major financial hubs.
So what I'm hearing is that everyone is building their own slightly different version of a digital currency. They're all building their own Lego sets.
That's a great way to put it.
But the problem, as I understand it from the sources, is that none of these Lego sets fit together. The bricks are different shapes and sizes.
That is the critical insight and the central challenge.
Sure.
The pieces exist. The digital yuan is real. The e-rupee is real. But they are fragmented silo systems. India's system doesn't natively talk to Brazil's system. And the whole point of this 2026 summit proposal is figuring out how to snap them together.
Which brings us to the plumbing, the how. We used the term interoperability earlier, and I think we need to really dig into that. The sources use this great analogy of trains and train tracks.
Right. Think of each country's CBDC as its own national railway system. If India's digital rupee runs on a narrow gauge track and China's digital yuan runs on a broad gauge track, what happens when the train full of money hits the border?
It screeches to a halt. You can't run a broad gauge train on a narrow gauge track.
It stops dead. You have to unload all the cargo, the money by hand, fill out a mountain of paperwork, and then load it onto a completely new train on the other side. It's a bottleneck. It's inefficient.
It's basically the digital version of the correspondent banking problem we just talked about.
Exactly. You've just replaced the steamship with a train that can't cross the border. Interoperability is about agreeing on a standard track gauge so the train can just keep going seamlessly from Mumbai to Shanghai to Rio.
So how do they do that? Because I imagine getting China and India, two strategic rivals, to agree on a single track size for their sovereign money is politically, let's say, difficult.
Incredibly difficult. This is where the engineering and the geopolitics collide. The research lays out 3 basic architectural models for how you can achieve this interoperability.
Okay, walk us through them. Model 1.
Model 1 is what's called compatible systems. This is the loosest form of alignment. Think of it like international power outlets.
Okay, the bane of every traveler's existence.
Precisely. The UK has one plug, Europe has another, the US has another. Model 1 is like everyone agreeing to use a common set of technical standards, like the ISO 2022 messaging standard. It's like agreeing on the voltage and the frequency, but not the plug shape.
So you still need an adapter. There's still an intermediary.
You still need an adapter. It preserves national sovereignty. Everyone keeps their own plug, but it's still clunky. It doesn't create that seamless highway.
Okay, so what's Model 2?
Model 2 is interlinked systems. This is the bridge model, and it's where all the action is. Instead of just adapters, this is like building a universal power strip or a hub. Everyone plugs their unique system into this central hub, and the hub handles the conversion instantly and automatically.
This sounds a lot like the internet, a network of networks.
That's the perfect analogy. The internet is made of thousands of independent networks that all agree to speak a common protocol, TCP/IP, to connect to each other. This model allows for functional interoperability while letting each country maintain control over its domestic system.
And the third model, just for completeness.
Model 3 is the most extreme, a single system. This is a unified platform. In our analogy, this is everyone in the world agreeing to rip out their walls and install the exact same power outlet.
Which sounds incredibly efficient from a technical standpoint.
The most efficient.
Yeah.
But it is, and I quote the sources, politically radioactive. Because it means nations would have to give up a huge amount of monetary sovereignty to a central governing body.
No one wants to hand over the keys to their monetary policy to a committee.
Absolutely not. So, for all practical purposes, everyone is focused on Model 2. Building those interlinked systems, building the bridges.
Okay, and this is where we get into the tech that makes my head spin a little bit, but it's important. DLT, distributed ledger technology.
Let's demystify it. At its simplest, think of a DLT, like a blockchain, as a special kind of database. It's a shared spreadsheet that everyone in the network has a copy of. And the crucial rule is that you can only add new lines. You can never delete or change previous lines.
So it creates an immutable, tamper-proof record of all transactions.
Exactly. But the real magic, the killer app for this in finance, is a feature it enables called atomic settlement. It's also known as PVP, or payment versus payment.
Atomic settlement? That sounds like something out of physics.
It kind of is. Remember that Hurst risk we talked about?
Yeah.
The risk of a bank going bust while your money is floating in the 5-day black box?
Yeah, the nightmare scenario.
Atomic settlement destroys the black box. It's a piece of code, a smart contract, that ensures the exchange of two different assets happens simultaneously or not at all.
So there's no time gap. There is no risk window.
Zero. It's like a digital escrow or a secure handshake. The smart contract holds my digital rupees and your digital yuan. It only releases the rupees to you at the exact same microsecond that it releases the yuan to me. If one part fails, the whole thing reverts as if it never happened.
That is a complete game changer for international trust. You don't need to trust the other bank or the intermediary anymore.
You just need to trust the code. It eliminates settlement risk entirely.
And speaking of code and bridges, this is the perfect transition. We have to talk about mBridge because up until now, this might sound a bit theoretical, a bit like a computer science project, but mBridge is real. It's live.
Yeah.
And it's working.
It is arguably the most important financial infrastructure project that most people have never heard of.
So what is it? mBridge stands for Multiple CBDC Bridge.
It is a live, functioning platform built on DLT, designed for instant, peer-to-peer atomic cross-border payments. It is the real-world manifestation of that Model 2 bridge we were just talking about. It replaces that slow relay race of paper batons and swift messages with direct, programmable digital connections.
Give us the timeline on this. Is this a new thing that just popped up?
No, it's been in development for years, which is why it's so mature now. It started way back in 2019 as a joint project between the central banks of Hong Kong and Thailand called Project Inthenon Lion Rock.
Okay, so a regional experiment.
A regional experiment. But then in 2021, two heavyweights joined, the People's Bank of China and the Central Bank of the UAE. That's when it got serious.
And the sources say the big MVP moment, the minimum viable product launch, was in 2024 when Saudi Arabia joined as a full participant.
Right. And you see the roster there, China, the UAE, Saudi Arabia. You have a major global manufacturer and two of the world's biggest energy suppliers all on the same platform.
So what happened to the transaction volume?
This is the truly mind-boggling part. In the initial pilot in 2022, it processed something like $22 million in transactions. A successful proof of concept.
Okay.
The latest figures from January 2026 show that the platform's cumulative transaction volume has now hit over $55 billion.
Wait, say that again. From 22 million to 55 billion.
55 billion. That is a 2,500-fold increase in just a couple of years. That is not a growth curve. That is a vertical line on a chart. It signals a move from experiment to real-world utility.
But there's a fascinating plot twist here regarding who runs it, because usually these big global financial infrastructure projects are run by the adults in the room, the big international organization.
Like the BIS, the Bank for International Settlements.
Right, the central bank for central banks based in Switzerland. They were involved from the beginning, weren't they?
They were. The BIS Innovation Hub incubated mBridge. They built the sandbox, provided the technical expertise, and gave it a stamp of global legitimacy. But in October 2024, something very significant happened.
What was that?
The BIS effectively walked out of the room. They announced they were exiting the governance structure of mBridge. They handed the keys, full operational control, over to the participating central banks themselves.
Why on earth would they leave a project that's growing 2,500-fold? That seems insane. You don't walk away from a rocket ship.
It wasn't insane. From their perspective, it was necessary self-preservation. The BIS is based in Basel, Switzerland. It's a core part of the post-World War II Western-led financial architecture. They realized that mBridge had evolved from a neutral technology experiment into a viable platform that could be used to bypass Western financial rails entirely.
Ah, it was no longer politically neutral.
It was no longer politically neutral. If mBridge is used by, say, Iran or Russia to trade oil with China, completely bypassing the dollar in the SWIFT system.
The BIS doesn't want its fingerprints on that. They can't be seen to be facilitating the evasion of Western sanctions.
Exactly. Being the landlord of that building became a massive geopolitical and legal risk. So they stepped away, leaving it as a fully sovereign project of its member central banks.
Wow. So now it is fully in the hands of China, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Thailand, and Hong Kong. How does it actually work under the hood? What's the tech?
It uses a custom-built distributed ledger called the mBridge ledger. But the most interesting technical detail, and this is a bit in the weeds, but it's important, is that it supports the EVM.
The Ethereum virtual machine.
Yes.
Hey, back up a second. You mean like the cryptocurrency Ethereum? The
Yeah.
public blockchain that people use to trade NFTs of, cartoon monkeys?
Glass.
Yeah.
The very same underlying architecture. Now, it's not running on the public Ethereum network, of course. It's a private permission version.
Yeah.
But it uses the same programming language, the same set of rules.
Why does that matter? Why would a group of central banks use technology associated with crypto?
It matters for one huge reason: developers. The EVM is the global standard for smart contracts. There are hundreds of thousands of developers all over the world who already know how to code for it. It dramatically lowers the barrier to entry for banks and companies to build applications on top of mBridge.
So they can easily write those atomic settlement contracts we talked about. A contract that says release payment automatically if and only if the bill of lading for this shipment is digitally verified at the port in Shanghai.
Precisely. It makes the money programmable. It allows for the automation of incredibly complex trade finance workflows.
But there is a geopolitical kicker here, isn't there? A really big one.
There is. The sources report that as of early 2026, a staggering 95% of the transaction volume on mBridge is denominated in ECNY, the digital yuan.
Wow, so it's a multilateral bridge, but one country's currency is overwhelmingly dominant on it. It's a bridge that's painted bright red.
You can certainly see it that way. It proves that sovereign money can be programmable and efficient without being privatized like Bitcoin. And it demonstrates a potential pathway for the internationalization of the yuan. It is, as one source puts it, monetary geopolitics encoded in software.
This leads us directly and unavoidably to the big debate: de-dollarization. We see headlines about the death of the dollar constantly. Is that what you're seeing here? Is the dollar about to go to zero because of mBridge?
We need to be very, very careful with that phrase.
Yeah.
The sources are clear on this. It is not about a sudden crash. It is not like one day the dollar is the undisputed king and the next day it's worthless paper. That's not how global finance works.
So what is it about?
The sources describe it as financial erosion. Not a sudden earthquake, but the slow, steady action of water wearing down a rock over decades.
Like termites in the floorboards of a house. You don't notice them day to day, but one day you take a step and your foot goes right through.
That's a great analogy. The strategy of the BRICS nations isn't to declare open war on the dollar. That would be financial suicide for them as well.
Yeah.
The strategy is to make the dollar optional.
If you build a modern high-speed highway around the dragon's lair, you don't have to go in and fight the dragon. You just drive past it.
Exactly. You create alternatives. You give businesses and other countries a choice. And we are seeing that manifest in the tactics on the ground. We mentioned Russia doing over 90% of its trade with China in local currencies, rubles and yuan.
And the China-Brazil trade shifting away from the dollar to a yuan-real settlement system.
But the really big one, the one that strikes at the heart of the system, is the petrodollar impact. With Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE all part of the expanded BRICS, and with platforms like mBridge available, we are seeing a significant expansion of non-dollar oil trade.
And that is historically significant. The petrodollar system, the agreement that oil would be priced and traded in U.S. dollars, has been the bedrock of U.S. financial power and global dollar demand for 50 years.
It has. It forces every country that needs to buy oil to also hold vast reserves of U.S. dollars. If a significant portion of the world's oil can be bought and sold without ever touching a dollar, the fundamental gravity of the dollar in the global system weakens.
And it's not just the technology, they're building alternative institutions too.
Yes, this is a crucial part of the strategy. You have the New Development Bank, NDB, often called the BRICS Bank, and the Contingent Reserve Arrangement, CRA. These are being set up explicitly as alternatives to the IMF and the World Bank.
So they're building an entire parallel system, routing around the Bretton Woods institutions that were established under U.S. leadership after World War II.
They are building their own ecosystem, from the plumbing up to the institutions.
Okay, but what about the idea I keep hearing rumors about? A single BRICS currency. One unified money for all of them, like the euro. Is that happening?
The sources are pretty unanimous and pretty clear on this. No, at least not anytime soon. The idea of a single BRICS currency is a myth for now. It creates great headlines. It's a powerful political idea, but it's not practical.
Why not? What's the roadblock?
I mean, think about the immense difficulty of managing the euro between structurally similar economies like Germany and Greece. The political fights are constant. Now imagine trying to manage a single currency between the state-led economy of China, the commodity-driven economy of Brazil, and the service-driven economy of India.
Their economic cycles are completely different. Their political systems are completely different.
Their needs are different. You simply can't have a common currency without a common fiscal policy, a common treasury, common debt, and they are nowhere near that level of political integration. They don't want to be.
So the focus remains on the pipes, not the water that flows through them.
Exactly. It's about infrastructure, not a new currency. Although looking further down the road, there is some quiet discussion of a bridge asset.
A bridge asset? What's that?
Not a currency you'd use in a shop, but a neutral settlement asset for the central banks to exchange between themselves. Maybe a digital token backed by a basket of their own currencies, or even gold. Some technologists have even floated the idea of using a neutral third-party crypto asset like XRP as a bridge, but
The central banks are skeptical of using private tokens they don't control.
very skeptical. They want to own and control the core rails.
Now, this all sounds like a master plan that's executing perfectly, but let's be the skeptics for a minute. This can't be frictionless. These countries don't exactly, trust each other implicitly.
Oh, there's plenty of friction. A huge amount. The sources talk about the triangle of distrust at the core of the bloc. Russia, India, and China, the RIC.
They are the strategic core, the heavyweights.
They are. But it is a politically very tense relationship. India and China have ongoing, sometimes violent, border disputes in the Himalayas. They are engaged in a major strategic rivalry for leadership across Asia and the global south.
And this leads to the China fear, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. This is perhaps the biggest internal challenge BRICS faces. The smaller nations, and India especially, are deeply worried about this entire project simply replacing dollar dominance with yuan dominance.
If mBridge is 95% denominated in the digital yuan, have you really achieved monetary autonomy? Or did you just swap a master in Washington for a master in Beijing?
That is the unspoken, and sometimes spoken question, in every meeting room. If the bridge is built primarily with Chinese technology and carries primarily Chinese currency, does Beijing ultimately hold a kill switch now?
That's a very valid fear. And it's not just geopolitical. There are economic frictions, too. That rupee problem we talked about earlier.
The rupee trap. It hasn't gone away just because you put it on a blockchain. A multilateral system needs to solve the fundamental problem of trade imbalances. The fact that some countries, like China, sell way more to the bloc than they buy from it.
Right. If Russia earns billions in rupees it can't spend, a digital system just means it has billions in digital rupees it can't spend.
You've just moved the problem to a more efficient ledger. You haven't solved the underlying economic imbalance. The system needs a robust way for those excess balances to be cleared, and that's a huge challenge.
And then there are the technical and governance hurdles. Who actually writes the code and sets the rules for this highway?
This is a critical point. Coding trust is much, much harder than coding software. Who governs the mBridge platform now that the BIS is gone? Who sets the technical standards? What happens if there's a software bug or a transaction dispute? Who is the final arbiter?
And what about privacy? This is a big one.
It's a paradox. You have this fundamental tension. On the one hand, you need maximum transparency and verifiability on the ledger to prevent illicit activities like money laundering and terror financing.
Yeah, but on the other hand...
On the other hand, you have nation-states who absolutely do not want their rivals, even their partners in the bloc, seeing the full details of all their transactions. They need privacy.
Which leads to this wild cryptographic concept mentioned in the sources, zero-knowledge proofs.
Right. It sounds like magic, but it's real cryptography. A zero-knowledge proof is a way for me to prove to you that I know a secret or that a statement is true without revealing the secret or the underlying data itself.
So in banking terms, I could prove to the network that I have sufficient funds in my account to make a payment without revealing my total account balance or my transaction history.
Exactly. It's a way to get maximum verifiability with minimal data exposure. But the technology is complex and computationally intensive. Integrating it into a high-speed, high-volume system like mBridge is a major technical hurdle they are still working on.
So looking forward, let's get a sense of the timeline. We are in early 2026. What does the roadmap look like for the next few years?
Well, this 2026 summit in India is positioned as the catalytic moment. It's where they will try to move from pilot projects and technical papers to a formal, top-level political agreement on interoperability. That would be a huge step.
And we also expect to see the launch of something called BRICS Pay around now.
Yes. If mBridge is the wholesale, behind-the-scenes plumbing, BRICS Pay is the consumer-facing application. Think of it as a blockchain-based payment system, maybe an app on your phone, that would allow a tourist from Brazil to scan a QR code and buy a coffee in Mumbai, with the payment settling instantly in the background, using their respective CBDCs.
That brings it down from the central bank level to the street level.
It does. But the full implementation of this grand vision, this digital highway, is a gradual march, not a sprint. The sources are clear that we should be looking at a 2030 horizon for a fully mature, interconnected system.
But the big picture change, the mental shift, has already happened.
It has. Money is now starting to behave like the internet. It's border-aware, but border-resilient. It knows where the borders are, but it's designed to flow across them seamlessly.
And what we're seeing is the end of neutrality. The idea of a single neutral global financial system that everyone uses is fragmenting. We are moving undeniably toward a multipolar financial world with at least two, maybe more, competing technological and currency blocks.
And in that new world, infrastructure is power. The future will be decided not just by who has the most aircraft carriers, but by who builds and controls the digital bridges.
So to synthesize all of this, we have India's bold proposal at the 2026 summit to formally link these systems. We have the proof of concept, mBridge, growing exponentially and now operating outside of Western governance. And we have the slow, methodical, deliberate unwinding of the dollar's 5-decade monopoly on global trade.
This is a fundamental shift from a world governed by treaties and tariffs to one governed by code and protocols.
And here is the provocative thought I want to leave everyone with. The entire impetus for this, as we've discussed, was the weaponization of the dollar system through sanctions. But if this new world comes to pass, if money becomes fully programmable, if it moves instantly peer-to-peer without intermediaries that can be pressured, does the very concept of a financial sanction as we know it become obsolete?
That is the billion, or maybe trillion-dollar question, isn't it? Does it become obsolete, or does the battlefield just move? Maybe the sanction of the future isn't freezing a bank account in New York anymore.
What is it then?
Maybe it's a state-sponsored cyber attack that targets the ledger itself. Maybe it's a malicious smart contract. Maybe the sanction is a line of code pushed out in a software update that denies a specific country access to the bridge.
So the battlefield doesn't disappear. It just moves from the courtroom in the Treasury Department to the server room.
Exactly. The new great game might be played by coders and cryptographers.
The revolution isn't being televised. It's being coded right now.
Yeah.
You should watch the outcomes of the 2026 BRICS Summit very, very closely. Thanks for listening to this deep dive.
Stay curious.